Hey guys! It feels so good to be back in this chair and film a language related video. I feel like I haven't done one in so long, and I think it has been quite a bit, like quite a while. So I haven't had like a chance to film a language related video, but I just want to like zoom back in into this topic, like why I created this channel, why I wanted people to learn how to speak a language that they want to speak, and find some niche, really specific tips that they can absorb into their learning. So, and today I just want to talk about why a lot of people don't see progress even after years of learning, and you just feel like you're stuck in the same place and you don't know how to move forward, or it's just like moving forward is hard and you don't know how to start, how to do it. A lot of the time that I know, like, people just give some generic, like really annoying tips, like you have to practice more, you have to learn more vocabulary, and then you'll move forward. Some people just can't do that, and there's some things holding them back that they might not think might be things that might be holding them back. So I have prepared some things for you. I'm gonna make you digest them, and these things that you think that might be holding you back from progressing. So there's a point called fossilized mistakes, and it's basically what you would think it might be. Your mistakes that you make over and over again get fossilized in place, and that means that basically every time that you make a mistake that isn't corrected, and every time that you make that same mistake over and over again as time passes, that mistake gets harder and harder to kind of fix, because every time that you don't have feedback from people that might be telling you that you know, this is a mistake, this is a pronunciation mistake, or any grammar mistake that you might have, and if that mistake is repeated over and over again and you don't have anybody to correct you, you don't correct yourself because maybe you don't notice the mistake, maybe you never get around to noticing that you have made that mistake, and it just gets stuck in that place. And so a lot of the time this happens because people don't have feedback. As I said, like, if you don't have anybody to help you in this process, and I'm not saying that you are supposed to have a tutor, but you always have to find different and various sources from where you can get your information so that you can notice that mistake yourself, or you can just talk to a person who's a speaker of the language. It doesn't have to be a native, not at all. It just has to be a person who comprehends the language enough to point out that you're making a certain mistake. Sometimes it might be a phrase, and sometimes it might be vocabulary, sometimes it might be a grammar rule that you have, you know, used differently for your whole life, and then you just kind of are stuck with it. And obviously when it's a grammar mistake, it's a little bit harder, it's a little bit more of a problem. The solution for that would be to honestly, like, for your whole journey, to just have a person or like a thing that's a constant sort of like help for you to come back from that, and just help you see what you're saying, help you see what you're absorbing, help you see what you use as information, help you see what you or store in your brain as information. Okay, so my next point is you constantly read and you constantly absorb and you listen, but you never practice it. If you're simply reading or listening, that is like a lot of why people, I also talked in my last language learning video that I made, I said why some people might understand the language but can't speak it themselves. And this is a big point in that like thing, and it's also a point why it might be holding you back from actually speaking a language. The best example I can give you is like when a person is married and they're from different cultures, and a spouse might understand their spouse's language. Like when they're speaking, they'll be like, oh, they're laughing with them, they're talking, and they don't understand that they understand them, but they do, because they've been together for years, and they just sort of, because they've been listening for so long and using context clues all this time, they've gathered up information for what might whatever they're saying mean, so they understand it. But if you would want to be like, oh, can you speak with me, like that, those two people cannot speak with each other, they just can understand each other. They've been sort of listening to each other for so long. and that's like the best example I can give you because it's from life. Like, it happens so much that like a lot of the time just even your friends like might understand your language because you've been friends for so long, but if you would actually start to speak to them, they wouldn't be able to utter anything. The third point that I'm going to be talking about is when a person starts learning and they just use the wrong level for their they just use the wrong source, they just use the wrong product for the level. A lot of the time I would see like people, I've seen this, like people would be like, I need to learn the language so fast, and they would be like reading, I don't know, like the Account of Monte Cristo, which is notoriously a hard and long book, and they would read that, and for example if they were learning French, they would read that in French, and they were like, I am learning French and I want to read that book, and I'm gonna learn it fast because I'm reading this hard and difficult book. Like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all, because when you're not matching your level to the product that you're absorbing, obviously you always have to step up, but language learning doesn't come as like a fast thing. It's not something you can skip or like, you know, 2x. I don't know, in every app there's like a button to like speed everything up, but like when you're not like, when you're at an A2 level or like B1 level and you're like, I want to step up to C2, so they absorb content from C2, but the thing is they don't get anything, like literally anything. They would take a product like a book from C2 level and they would watch a movie that's C2 level, like a complex psychological something, and they would be like, I do not understand anything. And first of all, that would make you so upset about the fact that you can't understand anything. They would be like, okay, I'm just gonna go back, I'm not gonna do anything, I'm just gonna leave it. But when you actually match your level and you go one by one, like as soon as you start A2, don't think about moving to B1. Like, you have to absorb everything that's in A2, and don't be ashamed of being like, oh, you speak German? Like, what level do you speak? A2. Like, don't be ashamed of that. Don't be like, oh yeah, I speak B2, and then you're like, shit, I said that I speak B2, I now have to learn stuff to like prove it to them that I speak this language semi-proficiently. So like, every time, a lot of people just, it has to do with like how they present themselves to the world, and then they just become ashamed, or a lot of the emotions come in, or sometimes the person just is just too ambitious. Like, being ambitious is not a problem, especially in language learning and like every aspect of life, I would say that. And being ambitious, it's an amazing thing. But when you're, I wouldn't say like ambitious, I think that's a really wrong word for this situation, but you have to take everything as you're going. So like, I finished A1, I finished A2, I finished B1, I finished B2. Obviously it's fun to test yourself from time to time, for like, be like, oh, maybe I understand a text from C2. And you might understand a part of it, especially if you speak like in the B's. But ultimately it's just completing every single level so that you can absorb everything and then just, you know, move on to the next point, so that you're not confused and then you're not discouraged. It's more like the two things that hold you back is being confused and being discouraged. And being discouraged is so easy. Like, it's so easy to just be like, I cannot do this, I'm just gonna leave it, like I don't need it, and that's it. And then just people just don't go back to the language at all. I do my best to like present my tips, but like some people just have to actually be willing to absorb those tips. Then some people just don't, like they don't want to subconsciously, which is a big problem. Okay, so this comes hand in hand with my last point, which is the fourth point, and it is just taking up too much once at a time. I'm just gonna breeze through this point because it's actually like very close to the one that I talked about previously. It's just like taking too much in a short period of time, and you're just like, I want to learn it and I'm gonna do it in 3 months, and then you're just cramming so much stuff. First of all, it happens without a plan most of the time. Second of all, it never ends up working out, especially with hard languages like Cantonese or Mandarin or Taiwanese or Russian, Arabic, any other, like Hebrew. Like, those languages are so hard to absorb in a short period of time. And Spanish is one of the easiest languages by, you know, like people, what people have been saying for like English speakers, Spanish is one of the easiest languages, they say. So like, even that, like cramming that into 3 months is almost impossible, because you're just gonna have to, first of all, work it to actually happen, even a smidge. but then you won't get to the level that you would initially want to. Like, you won't get to C1, C2. Like, that's just not gonna happen, because every time you cram stuff into a short period of time, it topples over. It's like a glass of water. You just pour so much so fast that it just ends up pouring over. But when you pour it slowly, it just actually ends up going to the hill. And so that's the same with like anything. Like, every time that you actually want to learn something, for it to actually be stuck in your memory, because memory doesn't work that easily. Memory has so many things that so many conditions to actually absorb things in your memory. And so one of those things is actually taking time, and, you know, taking time to actually let your brain absorb it, because most of the time your brain can't just be like, you know, topic, definition, and then you're just like, oh, okay. Okay, so my next point, which is the 5th point, is, I don't know why I'm always holding up 2 of my hands. This becomes 10, this becomes 8, but whatever, you're gonna have to, whatever. 5th point, and that is constantly translating things. This actually, like, is so, I used to do it, I'm not gonna lie, like, I used to do it. I used to always be like, I don't understand this, I'm just gonna translate it, and then I would screenshot it, actually, or sometimes I would put it in my notes app. I just put everything in my notes app, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna come back to this, and I'm gonna review it later, and I'm gonna memorize it. I didn't. It's a redundant thing. First of all, it's like you always constantly do it. Every single time you read a text, you're like, I don't know this word, I don't know this word. The best way to do it, like, if you have a text in front of you, because sometimes you would, one of my tips is, like, to just, if you're learning a language, just take language exams. In Spanish, I think it's dele, and in French, I think it's something else, I'm not sure. Like the IELTS exam for the English language, like, it's the same equivalent of that, just in other languages. And take that, and take those texts and review them, because they have one for each level. Like, they even have text for, like, A1 to C2, like, it's pretty wide. And just take those texts and read them over and over again, if you can. Just, like, if you don't know a word, figure it out with context clues, and then if you cannot, then translate it. You can write it on the text itself, and then review that text again, and review that text again, and then as you're reviewing it, you can actually, like, and then it kind of gets stuck, because you're like, okay, this is the text that I'm talking about. Then you remember the word. Like, that happens in life, that happens in your memory. Memory is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So sometimes you would see a word in a different context, like in a show or in a book, and then you would be like, where have I seen it before? Then you remember the context in which it was presented to you before. And then, okay, that was a text about, I don't know, like tea. And I learned it in a text about tea. What was it talking about? Just learn it on context clues. Obviously, for some people it happens slower, for some people it happens faster, so it all depends on your approach. So you have to learn which approach works best for you and go with it. Don't be like, okay, this language influencer told me that I need to learn in this specific type of learning. And it's the same thing with, like, educational content. When people say, like, oh, use the Pomodoro technique, and people will be like, use that technique for learning, and then every time you study, every time that you use that technique, it's going to be a foolproof technique, and you're always going to succeed. Like, for some people, it just doesn't work. Like, some people just don't like to, some people's brains aren't wired like that. The same thing, like, I, as a person who's, like, presenting you with information and trying to help you, I can't be like, you cannot use that type of learning. You just have to learn the language in this way, and this is the exact same way that it's going to work. No, you just have to see what works for you. Anyways, my 6th point is learning multiple languages. Learning multiple languages is a possibility. I will make a video on that. I think if you do want to, then please let me know, because I find that such a fascinating topic, like learning multiple things at once, because I've done it before and I'm doing it now. But when you learn multiple languages at once, obviously it's not that big of a problem. Like, people do it, and I do it, and a lot of people succeed in doing it. Sometimes when you overlap them too much, so like in one day, say it's Wednesday, and you decided to learn, oh gosh, these examples, I have to come up with, like, languages to put in examples. Again, Cantonese. If you're taking Swedish and Czech, and you're learning them at the same time, and you're just like, and you're overlapping them too much, so you're taking By overlapping, I don't mean like practicing regularly and being like 3 days this, 3 days that. That's not overlapping. That's actually a pretty good sort of system. But the way that you might overlap them, if you're taking like 30 minutes of a day of Czech, immediately transitioning to Swedish, and you're just like, two of these languages are so close together, and you're just kind of like, and you're cramming as much as possible into those 30 minutes of Czech, and then immediately you're cramming as much as possible into those 30 minutes of Swedish, and it just ends up being like a big porridge. Even the big bear wouldn't eat that porridge, so you shouldn't either. My 7th point is constantly learning from a book, ignoring however the heck the language sounds like, just being like, the book says so and I'll do what the book says. Like, when you actually start speaking, this isn't as a relevant thing because it's like more pronunciation focused. When you actually start speaking the language, you're just like, what the heck are you saying? Like, it's so evident a person who has been practicing by themselves or with another person than a person who's just like in a book 24/7. Nobody will understand you. I'm just saying this outright. You know those phonetic translations next to words? First of all, some people don't know how to read that, which I'm not blaming you, because it's normal for a lot of people to not know, but it's so easy to learn it, and it's like you don't even have to open YouTube. You just can read the phonetic translation, which comes in handy. But when you don't know the phonetic, when you haven't read the phonetic translation, when you haven't, you know, listened to whatever language you're learning, then just please hear what it sounds like, read the phonetic translation, because you wouldn't be able to speak the language if you don't know what it sounds like, which should be an obvious point, but I feel like some people still struggle with that, and some people are actually like just in the book and be like, the book told me to do so, so I will do so. Little like intermission. Can you see this cozy vibe in here? I really like it. I really enjoy it. We have a little Christmas tree set up. I'm going to show you it at the end of the video because I'm really proud of how it turned out. I just noticed that I have like cat and dog medicine and like behind. You can see it, but whatever. And the last point that I will be talking about, which is just like goes hand in hand with what I've said before, but I still want to mention it because it's a little bit of an important point and I just want to get it out there. Just learning the definition of a word without seeing it in context, that's a big problem that will set you back so far behind, because every time that you're like, this means that, this means that, like, sometimes, first of all, there's a lot of different nuances that come with that, and one of them is that some words have multiple definitions. And in dictionaries, if your goal is to just like kind of like speak and go to the country and speak like a native, if you want that, then you just kind of need to actually learn it in context. I honestly, like, sometimes it happens with phrases, like I don't know where to insert the phrase, because I'm just like, this phrase sounds like such an out of context thing, like I just say it randomly and I don't know how to use it. But then I Google it, and the word as well. Like if you don't know where the word, how you should use it, like just Google it. Just Google how it's used. Go to the translator app, just play with it, write different ways you can write in. Maybe sometimes the translation just comes up weird. And then like a bonus point, and it's one that is very evident, but still, every time that you take space from learning anything, whether it be space between learning vocabulary and space between learning grammar, whether it be space between learning and not learning, never take long breaks. It's gonna set you back. It's gonna be one of the biggest, if not the biggest thing to set you back, because every time you take space, that little memory kind of falls a little bit. That thing that you fossilized in your brain, it smudges a little bit. It becomes a little bit foggier. So do not take space. And that's my last little bonus advice. Was all I had for you today. I hope it was a fun video, an informative video for you. And I'm happy to be back. I really am. I'm happy to be back in this setting. I'm happy to be back in this environment. Also, if you can hear the dishwasher, I'm so sorry. It's been running for like the whole duration of the video. If you could hear it at any point, I apologize. But I'm gonna show you my Christmas tree real quick. It's not focusing. Look at those little handmade stockings. This cutie. I think it's really cute. I think it turned out so well. Look at that. Look at this little, what is it, like a a bird clock, or I don't know what it's called. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching till the end if you did, and I'll see you in my next video.